A millionaire walks into a cafe with his new girlfriend, but the world seems to stop when his eyes meet those of his ex-wife. Pregnant and alone, she moves between tables, carrying trays, while he, stunned, struggles to summon the courage to speak to her. Yet her response strikes him like an unexpected blow, leaving him reeling. What follows unearths dark secrets from a devastating past and ignites a journey of redemption that could change everything or destroy what remains. The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floors of the Jenkins Financial Group headquarters in downtown San Diego. Devin Jenkins stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office on the 35th floor, absently adjusting his Patek Philippe watch while gazing at the sailboats dotting the harbor below. At 35, he had everything society deemed valuable: a thriving investment firm, a Ferrari 488 GTB parked in the building's exclusive garage, and a penthouse in La Jolla with views that made real estate agents weep. Yet on this particular morning, none of it seemed to matter. His phone buzzed again, another message from his girlfriend, Victoria Chen, a prominent art curator he'd been dating for 2 months. She was organizing a charity gala at the San Diego Museum of Contemporary Art and wanted him to make an appearance. Devin ignored it, just as he'd been ignoring the growing emptiness in his chest. "Mr. Jenkins?" His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Your 9 a.m. is here." "Send them in, Margaret," he replied, straightening his Tom Ford suit jacket. The glass doors opened, and footsteps approached behind him. "Still admiring your kingdom?" The familiar voice made him turn. It was James Harrison, his oldest friend and the firm's legal counsel, wearing his usual knowing smirk. "Just thinking," Devin replied, moving to sit behind his Macassar ebony desk. "Dangerous habit," James quipped, settling into one of the leather chairs. "Especially when you should be focusing on the Morrison account. They're threatening to take their 100 million elsewhere." Devin's jaw tightened. "They won't. Not after I show them the projections for the new tech fund." "That's not why I'm here, Dev." James leaned forward, his expression serious. "I saw Cynthia yesterday." The name hit Devin like a physical blow. He hadn't heard it spoken aloud in months, though it echoed in his thoughts more often than he cared to admit. "At that little coffee shop near Balboa Park," James continued. "The one where she's working now." "Working?" Devin's voice caught. The last he'd heard, Cynthia had been interviewing for executive positions at several firms. "What do you mean, working at a coffee shop?" "As a barista." James watched his friend carefully. "And Dev, she's pregnant." The words seemed to drain all air from the room. Devin's mind raced back to their last night together, 1 month before the divorce was finalized. A moment of weakness, they'd called it. A goodbye that had turned into something more. "How far along?" he managed to ask. 4 months, by the look of it. James's implication was clear. The timing matched. Devin stood abruptly, moving back to the windows. Below, San Diego continued its morning routine, unaware of how his world was tilting on its axis. "Why didn't she tell me?" "Maybe because the last time you really talked, you were signing divorce papers," James suggested. "Or because you moved on so quickly with Victoria." The guilt that had been Devin's constant companion for months intensified. He remembered the last year of their marriage, the missed dinners, the forgotten anniversaries, the growing distance as he built his empire. Cynthia had tried to reach him, to warn him they were drifting apart, but he'd been too focused on the next deal, the next acquisition. "I need to see her," Devin said. "Think carefully about this," James warned. "You're not the same people you were when you met at Stanford. You've changed, and not necessarily for the better." Devin turned to face his friend. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you traded your soul for success, Dev. The guy who used to spend weekends teaching kids basketball at the Y. He's gone. The one who insisted on taking Cynthia stargazing in the desert on your first date because she mentioned loving astronomy. He disappeared somewhere between your first million and your first billion." The words stung because they were true. Success had changed him, hardened him. The modest apartment they'd shared in their early years had given way to increasingly luxurious homes, but they'd lost something essential in the process. His phone buzzed again. "Victoria, the Rothschild family confirmed for the gala. Wear your blue Brioni. It photographs better." "I have to fix this," Devin said, more to himself than James. "Fix what exactly?" James stood, straightening his tie. "Your guilty conscience, your image, or the fact that somewhere along the way you forgot what actually matters." Before Devin could respond, Margaret's voice came through the intercom again. "Mr. Jenkins, The Morrison team is on line 1. They're insisting on speaking with you. Tell them I'll call back, Devin said, reaching for his jacket. Dev, James called as he headed for the door. Whatever you're planning, remember she's not another acquisition. You can't just throw money at this and expect it to work. But Devin was already gone, his Ferragamo shoes clicking against the marble as he strode toward the elevator. In his mind, he could see Cynthia as she was when they first met, brilliant, ambitious, and utterly unimpressed by material wealth. She'd been pursuing her PhD in astrophysics when a mutual friend introduced them at a campus coffee shop. The irony of her working at one now wasn't lost on him. The elevator descended, and Devin watched his reflection in the polished doors. James was right. He barely recognized himself anymore. The hungry young man who'd fallen in love with a girl who could talk for hours about dark matter and stellar evolution had been buried under expensive suits and boardroom victories. As he emerged into the lobby, his phone buzzed one final time. Victoria again. The Astor Foundation wants to discuss a potential 8-figure donation. Don't make any plans for dinner. Devin turned off his phone and handed his parking ticket to the valet. It was time to face the consequences of his choices and perhaps, if he was lucky, find a way back to the person he used to be. The Lighthouse coffee shop sat nestled between a boutique art gallery and a vintage bookstore in one of San Diego's most charming neighborhoods. Devin parked his Ferrari a block away, suddenly self-conscious of its conspicuous luxury. Through the window, he could see Cynthia moving efficiently behind the counter, her pregnant belly visible beneath her burgundy apron. She looked tired, but carried herself with the same quiet grace he remembered. Before he could enter, his phone rang. The Morrison account. With a deep breath, he answered. Jenkins speaking. Mr. Jenkins, Eleanor Morrison's crisp voice cut through the line. I've been reviewing your firm's performance. Care to explain why we're underperforming the market by 2 points? Mrs. Morrison, I was actually about to what? Lose another 100 million of our family's money? The edge in her voice could cut steel. My father trusted your firm because of your reputation for personal attention. Lately, it seems that reputation might be outdated. The irony of her words wasn't lost on him. Personal attention, exactly what he'd failed to give his marriage. Give me 48 hours, he said, watching Cynthia through the window. I'll have a complete strategy revision on your desk, including our new tech fund projections. 24 hours, Eleanor countered, or we're moving our accounts to Goldman. The call ended and Devin stood frozen, torn between two worlds. Through the glass he saw a customer snap his fingers rudely at Cynthia, demanding attention. Something protective and angry flared in his chest. Inside, the coffee shop was warm and busy with morning customers. The scent of freshly ground beans and pastries filled the air. Cynthia looked up as the bell above the door chimed, and for a moment, their eyes met. She stiffened, but maintained her professional composure. Welcome to Lighthouse, she said mechanically. What can I get you? Cynthia, he started, but was interrupted by a tall man emerging from the back room. Is there a problem here? The man wore a manager's badge reading Marcus. His tone suggested he'd dealt with difficult customers before. No problem, Cynthia answered quickly. He was just leaving. Actually, Devin straightened, falling back on years of boardroom confidence. I'd like to speak with the owner. Marcus's eyebrows rose. That would be me, Marcus Fletcher. Could we talk privately? It's about your employee benefits package. 20 minutes later, in Marcus's cramped office, Devin laid out his proposal. Full health insurance for all employees, matched 401k, paid maternity leave. I'll fund it personally through a small business grant from my foundation. Marcus leaned back in his chair, suspicious. And what's the catch? No catch. Just make sure Cynthia gets lighter duties, no heavy lifting, no extended standing. She told me about you, Marcus said quietly. The hotshot ex-husband. Wall Street wonder boy who was too busy making millions to notice his marriage crumbling. The description stung, but Devin didn't argue. I'm trying to make things right. By throwing money at it. Marcus shook his head. You know what Cynthia did yesterday? Stayed late to help a college kid with his calculus homework. Reminded me of how she used to teach at the university before everything fell apart. The revelation hit Devin hard. He hadn't known she'd left academia. Another casualty of their divorce. As he left the coffee shop, a sleek Bentley pulled up. Victoria stepped out, her Hermes bag catching the morning light. Darling, I've been calling. She air-kissed his cheek. The museum board is meeting in an hour to discuss the gala. We need you there. Victoria, I can't. Can't. She laughed lightly. Devin, the Rothschilds are flying in specifically to discuss your proposal for their European holdings. This isn't just a party. It's a $100 million opportunity. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. James, Morrison lawyers called. They're drafting withdrawal papers. The next few hours passed in a blur of meetings and calls. Devin worked through lunch, restructuring the Morrison portfolio, while Victoria texted increasingly urgent messages about the gala. By late afternoon, he was back at the coffee shop, watching Cynthia serve her last customers of the day. We're closing, she said when he approached the counter. I know about the teaching position, he replied softly. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? That I lost my research grant after the divorce. That no university wants to hire a professor who had to take a semester off for personal reasons. She wiped the counter with sharp, angry motions. You were busy with your empire, remember? I want to help. Help? She laughed bitterly. Like you helped by sending your girlfriend to check up on me. Devin frowned. What are you talking about? Victoria Chen. She came in last week, made a show of ordering our quaint coffee, then oh so casually mentioned she was dating you. Asked if I needed any assistance. Even offered to connect me with some charitable organizations. The revelation shocked him. Victoria hadn't mentioned visiting Cynthia. His phone buzzed again. Eleanor Morrison. Time's up, Mr. Jenkins. Decision needed by morning. As if on cue, Victoria's message followed. Car accident on Harbor Drive, running late for the board meeting. Stall them. Cynthia watched the notifications light up his phone. Still juggling the whole world, I see. Some things never change. But something had changed. Looking at Cynthia, seeing the strength and dignity with which she carried herself despite everything, Devin felt the walls he'd built around his heart begin to crack. I remember the night we met, he said quietly. You were explaining dark matter to a group of freshman students at that campus cafe. You said that sometimes the most important things in the universe are the ones we can't see directly. We can only observe their effects on everything around them. Don't, she whispered, but he continued. I've spent years chasing visible success, money, status, power, but I lost sight of the invisible things that actually matter. Mr. Jenkins, a young barista interrupted. There's a Ms. Chen on the phone for you, says it's urgent. Devin looked at his phone, then at Cynthia. The choice he made in that moment would set in motion a chain of events that would either restore or permanently destroy what remained of their connection. Later that night, in his La Jolla penthouse, Devin sat surrounded by financial reports and gala invitations. On his laptop, a half-finished email to the Morrison family waited for his attention. His phone showed dozens of missed calls from Victoria and the museum board, but his mind was on a small notebook he'd found in his desk drawer, a relic from his early days with Cynthia. Inside, in his younger self's handwriting, was a quote she'd once shared about binary stars. They orbit each other, forever bound by gravity, their dance invisible to the naked eye but fundamental to their existence. He reached for his phone, not to return Victoria's calls or appease the Morrisons, but to do something he should have done months ago. The message was simple. I'm sorry, not for today, but for every day I made you feel like you weren't the center of my universe. As he pressed send, his office phone lit up. Eleanor Morrison's name flashed on the screen, demanding an answer about her family's fortune. Simultaneously, his email pinged with an urgent message from the museum board about the gala's seating arrangements. The old Devin would have jumped to address these crises, to preserve his carefully constructed world of wealth and influence. But as he sat in his luxurious penthouse, surrounded by all the trappings of success, he realized he was finally ready to risk losing it all to regain what truly mattered. The question was, would Cynthia give him the chance to prove it? The morning headlines on the San Diego Business Journal's website hit like a thunderbolt. Jenkins Financial Group under SEC investigation. Devin stared at his tablet screen, his coffee growing cold on his Carrara marble kitchen counter. The article detailed allegations of improper trading practices and potential manipulation of client funds, specifically mentioning the Morrison account. His phone erupted with notifications. Board members, clients, reporters, all demanding answers. But one message stood out. From James. Turn on CNBC now. The massive screen in his living room flickered to life, revealing Victoria Chen standing beside Eleanor Morrison, at a press conference outside the San Diego Museum of Contemporary Art. As head of the museum's board, Victoria was saying, her Chanel suit immaculate in the morning sun, I was shocked to discover these irregularities. The evidence, Mrs. Morrison brought to my attention clearly shows that Jenkins Financial Group has been mishandling client funds for years. Devin's world tilted on its axis. Victoria, his girlfriend, the woman he'd trusted, had been working with Eleanor Morrison all along. The gala, the constant demands for his presence at board meetings, the strategic introductions to other wealthy clients, it had all been part of their plan. His secure line rang. James. Tell me you didn't do what they're saying, his friend demanded without preamble. Of course not. Devin grabbed his keys, heading for the elevator. Meet me at the office and get our compliance team ready. That's not all. James's voice was grim. Someone leaked your personal financial records. The Post is running a story about how you've been secretly buying up properties around that coffee shop where Cynthia works. They're painting it as stalking behavior. Devin froze. The property acquisitions had been meant as a surprise. His plan to revitalize the neighborhood, to create a community arts and education center where Cynthia could teach again. Now it would be twisted into something sinister. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, the coffee shop owner. Media circus outside my shop. Cynthia's upset. Fix this. The drive downtown was a blur of angry calls and emergency meetings. By the time Devin reached his office, the lobby was packed with reporters. Security had to escort him through a side entrance. In the conference room, his executive team waited with ashen faces. On multiple screens, financial networks dissected his company's fall from grace. The stock was in free fall. It's a setup, he announced, loosening his tie. Victoria and Eleanor Morrison orchestrated this. We know, James replied, sliding a folder across the table. But that's not the worst part. Look at the signature on these trading authorizations. Devin opened the folder and felt his blood run cold. The signatures were perfect forgeries of his own, authorizing trades he'd never approved, and the digital trail led back to his personal computer. Someone hacked my system? More than that. James looked pained. They had physical access to your office, your home, intimate knowledge of your schedule and security protocols. The realization hit like a physical blow. Victoria hadn't just betrayed him. She'd been planted in his life for this specific purpose. His phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Your company or your child, your choice. M. Attached was a document, a draft story about Cynthia, filled with vicious lies about research fraud at her university, allegations that would destroy any chance of her returning to academia. The timestamp showed it was ready to go to press within the hour. They're trying to force a quick settlement, James analyzed. If you sign over controlling interest in the firm to their investment group, they'll make the investigation go away. And if I don't, they'll destroy everything, including Cynthia's reputation. Eleanor Morrison has enough media connections to make it stick. A knock at the door interrupted them. Margaret entered, looking worried. Mr. Jenkins, Cynthia Bennett is here. She entered before he could respond, her face pale but determined. I saw the news. What did you do, Devin? The accusations in the media reports hung between them like a physical barrier. He could see the doubt in her eyes, the fear that she'd been wrong to ever trust him again. It's not what you think, he started, but she cut him off. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been manipulating everyone around you. The properties around the coffee shop? Were you trying to force me out? No, I was trying to... He stopped, realizing how hollow any explanation would sound right now. James cleared his throat. We should show her. Devin nodded slowly, then turned his laptop to face Cynthia. On the screen was a detailed proposal for the Community Science and Arts Center, complete with plans for a state-of-the-art planetarium and research facilities. The properties he'd purchased were meant to be donated to the project, with Cynthia named as executive director. I wanted it to be a surprise, he said quietly. A way to help you get back to teaching, to research. No strings attached. Cynthia sank into a chair, one hand protectively over her belly. Why didn't you just tell me? Would you have accepted it if I had? Before she could answer, his phone buzzed again. Eleanor Morrison's ultimatum. 1 hour left to decide. There's something else you need to see, he said, showing her the threat about the false story. Cynthia read it, her face hardening. So that's why Victoria kept asking about my research at Stanford. She was fishing for details they could twist. I'm so sorry. Devin whispered. "This is all my fault. I brought this danger into your life." "No," Cynthia's voice was firm. "This is Eleanor Morrison's fault, and Victoria's, and I can prove it." She pulled out her phone, showing them a video. Security footage from the coffee shop. Victoria came in last week, but she wasn't alone. Watch the background. In the grainy footage, they could see Victoria meeting with someone in a corner booth, Eleanor Morrison herself, 2 weeks before the scandal broke. "Marcus installed cameras after a robbery last month," Cynthia explained. "He gave me access to the footage when the reporters started showing up this morning." James was already typing furiously on his laptop. "This proves conspiracy. If we can show they were working together before the allegations, it's not enough." Devin shook his head. "They're too powerful. Even with this evidence, they could drag this out in court for years. Years that would destroy everything: the company, Cynthia's reputation, our child's future." "Then don't fight them in court," Cynthia said suddenly. "Fight them at their own game." She grabbed a marker and went to the conference room's whiteboard. In moments, complex equations and diagrams began to appear. The same brilliant analytical mind that had once mapped dark matter now turned to financial warfare. "Eleanor Morrison's power comes from old money," she explained, drawing connections. "But old money is predictable. It follows patterns just like celestial bodies. If we can predict their next move..." For the next 40 minutes, they worked frantically, combining Cynthia's analytical insights with Devin's market knowledge. James coordinated with their legal team, preparing for multiple scenarios. With 5 minutes left on the ultimatum, Devin made his choice. He picked up his phone and dialed Eleanor Morrison's number. "Have you made your decision?" Eleanor's smug voice came through the speaker. "Yes," Devin replied, meeting Cynthia's eyes across the room. "But first, let me tell you about dark matter." What happened next would be talked about in financial circles for years to come. The battle that began that morning would reshape not just Jenkins' financial group, but the entire landscape of power in San Diego. And at its heart was a truth about love, trust, and redemption that no amount of money could buy. Eleanor's voice hardened. "Dark matter? Have you lost your mind, Jenkins?" "Not at all," Devin replied, activating his speakerphone as Cynthia continued writing equations. "You see, dark matter is invisible, but its effects are very real. Just like the trail of shell companies you've been using to short our stock." There was a moment of silence on the line. James looked up from his laptop with a slight smile. They had her attention. "In fact," Devin continued, "if you check your portfolio right now, you might notice something interesting about your short positions." The sound of frantically clicking keys came through the speaker, then a sharp intake of breath. "What did you do?" Eleanor's composure cracked. "I learned from the best," Devin answered. "Victoria was very thorough in studying my schedule, my habits, but she missed something crucial: my late-night calls to commodity traders in Asia. While you were busy orchestrating this scandal, I was quietly buying up the very assets your hedge fund relies on for collateral." Cynthia's equations had revealed the pattern. Eleanor's fund had over-leveraged itself, using the same assets as collateral for multiple loans. By controlling those assets, Devin could trigger a chain reaction of margin calls. "You're bluffing," Eleanor snapped. "You don't have the liquidity for purchases that large." "Check the transaction records," Devin suggested. "Oh wait, you can't. Because just like dark matter, these purchases won't be visible until it's too late. You have 1 hour to retract all allegations and resign from your fund's board. Otherwise, I start selling." He ended the call and turned to find Cynthia staring at him with a mixture of amazement and concern. "Will it work?" she asked. "It has to," he replied, "but there's something else we need to discuss." He pulled up another document on his screen, a trust agreement naming their unborn child as the primary beneficiary of his personal fortune. "Whether this works or not, I want to ensure our child's future is secure." Cynthia read the document, her eyes widening at the figures involved. "Devin, this is everything you own." "Not everything," he corrected softly. "Some things are worth more than money." The next hour was the longest of their lives. James coordinated with their legal team, preparing for every possible outcome. Margaret ordered food that no one touched. On the screens, financial networks continued to speculate about Jenkins Financial Group's imminent collapse. 10 minutes before their deadline, Victoria arrived unannounced, her designer outfit slightly disheveled. "You have to stop this," she demanded, her carefully cultivated poise cracking. "Eleanor Morrison isn't someone you can beat." Like you beat me? Devin asked quietly. Was any of it real, Victoria? She had the grace to look ashamed. It was business, Devin. Eleanor offered me a seat on her board, control of the museum's endowment. And all you had to do was destroy someone who trusted you, Cynthia interjected, her voice cold. Victoria turned, seeming to notice her for the first time. Her eyes widened at the sight of Cynthia's pregnancy. I didn't know. Yes, you did, Devin corrected. That's why you visited the coffee shop, why you offered her charitable assistance. You were gathering ammunition. I can help fix this, Victoria offered desperately. Eleanor has other weaknesses, things she told me in confidence. No, Devin cut her off. We're not like you. We're not trading in betrayals anymore. As security escorted Victoria out, Devin's phone lit up with a message from Eleanor Morrison's private number. Attached was a single document, her letter of resignation from the fund, effective immediately. James burst into the room moments later. The allegations are being retracted. The SEC just received a formal withdrawal of the complaints. And, he paused, grinning, the Morrison family's lawyers are calling. They want to maintain their accounts with us under new management. The relief in the room was palpable, but Devin's attention was on Cynthia, who had sunk into a chair, hands protectively over her belly. Are you okay? He asked, kneeling beside her. Just tired, she smiled weakly. Apparently bringing down financial empires is exhausting when you're pregnant. Looking at her in that moment, Devin saw not just the mother of his child, but the brilliant woman he'd fallen in love with years ago. The one who could see patterns in chaos, whether in the stars or in the manipulated markets. I know it's not enough, he said quietly, but I truly am sorry. Not just for today, but for every time I chose empire over love. What will you do now? She asked. The company survived, but things can't go back to how they were. Devin stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the city he'd spent so long trying to conquer. I'm stepping down as CEO, he announced. James can handle the transition, the Community Science and Arts Center project. If you're still interested, it's yours to run, no strings attached. And you? I thought I might teach. He smiled at her surprise. There's a local youth center looking for someone to help kids learn about financial literacy. Seems like a good place to remember what really matters. As the sun set over the Pacific, casting long shadows through the office windows, Devin and Cynthia stood together, watching their world reshape itself across multiple screens. Whether this new chapter would lead to reconciliation remained to be seen, but for the first time since their divorce, they were truly united. Whatever happens, Cynthia said softly, our child will know their father fought for what was right. Devin reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. In that moment, surrounded by the wreckage and rebirth of his financial empire, he had never felt richer. 3 weeks after the Morrison scandal, Devin stood in front of a group of teenagers at the San Diego Youth Center, his Brioni suit replaced by casual slacks and a button-down shirt. The whiteboard behind him showed basic investment concepts, but the kids' attention was on the headlines he'd brought for discussion. Jenkins Financial Group announces new leadership, and Billionaire CEO steps down for philanthropic focus. So you just gave it all up? Asked Miguel, a sharp-eyed 16-year-old who reminded Devin of himself at that age. Just like that? Not exactly, Devin replied, perching on the edge of his desk. I'm still the majority shareholder, but sometimes leading means knowing when to step back. Success isn't just about making money, it's about creating value. After class, as he packed up his materials, his phone buzzed with a message from James. Board meeting in an hour. The transition team has concerns. The drive downtown felt different now. His Ferrari had been replaced by a more modest Tesla Model S. Still luxurious, but less ostentatious. As he passed the Lighthouse coffee shop, he noticed the for sale sign in the window. Marcus had decided to retire, and the property developers were already circling. In the Jenkins Financial Group boardroom, the tension was palpable. The transition team, led by Sarah Chen, no relation to Victoria, as she'd pointedly clarified in her first meeting, sat opposite James and the other executives. The numbers for Q3 are concerning, Sarah began, sliding reports across the table. Client confidence is still shaky after the Morrison incident. Your decision to step down has some major investors nervous. Show them the community investment portfolio, Devin suggested to James. His friend nodded and pulled up a new presentation. We've restructured 15% of our holdings into sustainable and community development projects, James explained. The returns are smaller but more stable, and the positive PR is rebuilding trust. PR won't matter if we can't maintain our luxury client base, Sarah countered. These people expect excess, Devin. They don't want sustainable, they want spectacular. The old Devin would have acquiesced, would have chased the bigger numbers. Instead, he thought of Miguel and his classmates, of the future they deserved. Then we'll redefine spectacular, he said firmly. Show them the Science Center projections. The plans for the Community Science and Arts Center filled the screens. A stunning architectural marvel that would transform the neighborhood around the coffee shop. But instead of luxury condos, it featured research facilities, community spaces, and that state-of-the-art planetarium. The Morrison family has agreed to be our first major donors, James announced. Eleanor's resignation opened the door for her children to take control. They're eager to restore their family's reputation. As the meeting continued, Devin's phone lit up with a message from Cynthia. Doctor's appointment in 30 minutes, still coming? He excused himself from the board meeting, leaving James to handle the details. The hospital was across town, and as he navigated through traffic, he reflected on the changes of the past few weeks. The waiting room of the upscale medical center was filled with expensive handbags and designer outfits. Cynthia sat apart from the other expectant mothers, grading papers from her new position at a local community college. She'd accepted the temporary teaching role while the science center was being developed, refusing Devin's offer to expedite the process. "You look tired," she observed as he sat beside her. "Good tired," he replied. "The kids at the center are incredible. One of them, Miguel, he's already developing a microfinance program for his neighborhood. Like someone else I used to know," she smiled slightly, before quarterly reports became more important than quarterly stars. The reminder of their past stung, but it was fair. Before he could respond, a nurse called Cynthia's name. The examination room was state-of-the-art, with equipment that cost more than most houses. As the technician prepared for the ultrasound, Devin noticed Cynthia's hands fidgeting with her wedding ring. No, her grandmother's ring, the one she'd worn since the divorce. "I've been thinking about the coffee shop," she said suddenly. "About Marcus selling. I heard. The developers are already—" "I want to buy it," she interrupted. "Not with your money. I've been saving from my teaching salary, and with my grant money. It won't be enough," he said gently. "Not in that neighborhood." "I know, but I have an idea." She pulled out her tablet, showing him a business plan. "A community-owned cooperative. The employees become shareholders, and we partner with the college to provide job training. We could call it Starlight Coffee." Before he could respond, the ultrasound image appeared on the screen. Their baby's profile was clear, one tiny hand raised as if waving. "Would you like to know the gender?" the technician asked. They looked at each other, and in that moment something shifted. This wasn't about their past anymore, or even their present. It was about the future they were creating. After the appointment, they walked through the hospital's elaborate garden, a luxury feature meant to soothe wealthy patients. But Cynthia led them to a simple wooden bench away from the designer landscaping. "I've been offered a visiting professor position," she announced, "at Stanford." Devin felt his heart sink. Stanford meant San Francisco, meant distance, meant— "I turned it down," she continued. "The Science Center needs me here. These kids need me here." She paused. "And maybe we need to be here too." "We? I'm not saying we should get back together," she clarified quickly. "But watching you these past weeks, teaching at the youth center, restructuring the company, actually listening instead of just solving problems with money, it reminds me of who we used to be." A commotion near the hospital entrance interrupted them. Paparazzi had gathered, hoping to catch pictures of a celebrity patient. Devin instinctively moved to shield Cynthia, but she stood her ground. "I'm not hiding anymore," she said firmly. "Let them take their pictures. Let them see that success isn't about expensive suits and charity galas. It's about building something that matters." That evening, Devin sat in his penthouse, surrounded by moving boxes. He'd decided to sell the place, to find something more modest closer to the youth center. On his laptop, dozens of emails demanded attention, board members concerned about the company's new direction, wealthy clients threatening to leave, real estate agents eager to list his property. But his attention was on a different email from Miguel. "Check out my neighborhood's first microloan success story." Attached was a photo of a small food truck serving authentic Mexican cuisine. The owner was Miguel's mother, her proud smile worth more than any luxury car or designer watch. His phone buzzed with another message from Sarah Chen. The Singapore investors are pulling out. We need to reconsider the community investment strategy. Then another from James. You need to see this. Attached was a video of Cynthia taken that afternoon at the hospital. But instead of looking flustered by the paparazzi, she was speaking to them with passion about the Science Center, about educational opportunity, about real change. The clip had gone viral, with comments pouring in from people inspired by her vision. As night fell over San Diego, Devin made a series of decisions that would further transform his life and legacy. He drafted emails, made calls, and sketched out plans that would either rebuild or completely dismantle what remained of his old world. First, he called Miguel. How would you like to present your microfinance program to our board? Then he contacted Marcus about the coffee shop. I have a proposition about Starlight Coffee, but not as an investor, as a customer and community member. Finally, he messaged Cynthia. Remember what you said about dark matter? How the invisible things have the biggest impact? I think I finally understand what you meant. Her reply came moments later. Took you long enough, Professor Jenkins. The professor title made him smile. It wasn't said with sarcasm anymore, but with a hint of the warmth they'd once shared. As he looked out over the city lights, he realized that true wealth wasn't in his panoramic view or his art collection or his stock portfolio. His contemplation was interrupted by an urgent call from Sarah Chen. The Singapore investors are hosting an emergency meeting. They're streaming live in 5 minutes. Devin quickly set up his laptop in his home office, surrounded by moving boxes and half-packed luxury items. The faces that appeared on his screen were stern, representing billions in Asian investment capital. Mr. Jenkins, began Mr. Wong, the lead investor, we've reviewed your recent decisions with considerable concern. This shift toward community investment and education represents a significant departure from the aggressive growth strategy that attracted us initially. Devin took a deep breath, then did something unexpected. He turned his laptop around to show them his partially packed office. Gentlemen, what you're seeing is change in action. These artworks, each worth millions, are being donated to the new Science Center. That Picasso behind me? It's going to hang in a place where kids who've never been to a museum can see it every day, he continued, his voice gaining confidence. You invested in Jenkins Financial because we understand value, but true value isn't just about quarterly returns. It's about sustainable growth, community development, and creating opportunities that multiply over generations. There was a long pause before Mr. Wong spoke again. My grandfather, he said slowly, started our family fortune with a small noodle shop that offered free meals to students. He believed that feeding minds was as important as feeding bodies. A slight smile crossed his face. Perhaps, Mr. Jenkins, you are not so much abandoning our principles as returning to them. After the call, Devin received another message from Miguel. Mom's food truck is packed every day. She's thinking about a second one. Want to be our first corporate lunch client? The next morning, Devin made 2 significant decisions. First, he called his real estate agent and listed the penthouse, but with a condition. A portion of the sale would go to fund scholarships at the youth center. Second, he drafted a proposal for a new division of Jenkins Financial, a microfinance program modeled after Miguel's community initiative. At the youth center that afternoon, he shared these developments with his students. Success, he told them, isn't about what you have, it's about what you build. Like that science center? Asked Lisa, another student who'd been skeptical of him initially. The one your ex-wife is going to run? Ex-wife for now, quipped Miguel with a knowing smile. The comment caught Devin off guard. These kids, with their uncanny ability to see through adult complexities, had noticed something he'd been trying not to acknowledge. His relationship with Cynthia was evolving into something neither of them had expected. That evening, he got an unexpected visit from James at his soon-to-be former penthouse. His friend arrived carrying a dusty box he'd found while cleaning out Devin's old office. Remember these? James asked, pulling out photographs from their college days. There was Devin and Cynthia at a campus fundraiser, both wearing cheap suits but beaming with purpose. Another showed them volunteering at a local science fair, helping kids build model rockets. We were broke but happy, Devin mused, handling the photos carefully. You were rich in the ways that mattered, James corrected. And now, Maybe for the first time since then, you are again. Their conversation was interrupted by a group text from Cynthia to both of them. Emergency at the coffee shop. Need you both here now. They rushed to Lighthouse Coffee, expecting trouble, only to find Cynthia standing with Marcus, surrounded by the shop's employees. On the wall was a large blueprint. I figured it out, she announced excitedly. The cooperative model, the partnership with the college, everything. But we need your help, not your money, she added quickly, seeing Devin's expression. Your expertise, both of you. As she laid out her vision for Starlight Coffee, Devin watched her in amazement. She had taken his resources and connections, but built something entirely her own. The cooperative would be owned by the employees, with a training program for students interested in business and science. We'll have astronomy nights on the roof, she explained, pointing to the plans. Science lectures during slow hours, a space where knowledge and community can grow together. Like a caffeine-fueled science center preview, James joked. Exactly, Cynthia beamed. And speaking of previews, she handed Devin an envelope. Inside was an ultrasound picture, clearer than the last one, with a note attached. It's a girl. I thought maybe we could name her Aurora. You know, for the stars. The moment was interrupted by a notification on everyone's phones. Jenkins Financial Group's stock had jumped 10% following the announcement of their new community investment division. The Singapore investors had not only stayed, but had doubled their commitment, citing the company's innovative approach to sustainable growth. Later that night, after helping Cynthia and Marcus draft the initial cooperative agreements, Devin walked her to her car. The San Diego evening was cool, and she wrapped her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. Aurora Jenkins, he said softly. It's perfect. Aurora Bennett Jenkins, she corrected with a small smile. She'll have both our names, just like she'll have both our worlds. The stars and the earth, science and business, dreams and practicality. As they stood there in the gentle California night, surrounded by the remnants of his old life and the foundations of something new, Devin understood what true wealth really meant. It wasn't in his panoramic view, or his art collection, or his stock portfolio. It was in the invisible things, in Miguel's mother's smile, in Cynthia's unwavering integrity, in the potential of every student at the youth center. In the future they were building, not just for Aurora, but for every child who would look up at the stars from the Science Center's planetarium, and maybe, just maybe, in the second chance, he was finally learning to deserve. The morning of the Science Center's groundbreaking ceremony dawned clear and bright over San Diego. Devin stood at the site, watching construction crews prepare for the day's events. The former retail spaces around the Lighthouse Coffee Shop had been cleared, making way for what would become a beacon of education and opportunity. His Tesla was parked beside a gleaming food truck, Miguel's mother's second location, now part of a successful small business empire that had grown from that first microloan. His phone buzzed with an urgent message from Sarah Chen. Turn on CNBC now. He pulled up the network on his phone to find Victoria Chen being interviewed live from New York. His heart stopped as he read the caption, Former Jenkins financial executive reveals new evidence in Morrison scandal. While Mr. Jenkins has crafted a compelling narrative of redemption, Victoria was saying, her composed exterior masking something darker, the truth about those trades is far more complicated. I have documents that show. The feed cut out as James called. Don't panic, his friend said without preamble. We knew this might happen. Plan B is ready. Sas, Plan B had been Cynthia's idea, a complete transparency initiative that would open their books to public scrutiny, showing not just their financial dealings, but the real impact of their community investments. It was risky, unprecedented in the private banking world, but it aligned with everything they now stood for. Execute it, Devin ordered, then ended the call as he spotted a familiar figure approaching through the morning shadows. Eleanor Morrison walked with the confidence of someone accustomed to wielding power, her Hermes bag and Chanel suit a stark contrast to the construction site. Behind her, a group of reporters gathered, sensing a confrontation. Bold move, she said, gesturing to the construction around them. Using my family's scandal as a springboard for your image rehabilitation. I must admit, I underestimated you. This isn't about image, Eleanor, Devin replied calmly. But you already know that, don't you? You've seen the impact reports. Oh yes, your famous community impact metrics. Very touching. But did you really think we wouldn't find the irregularities in the original Morrison account trades? Victoria has been quite thorough in her review. Before Devon could respond, another voice cut through the morning air. Those irregularities you're so concerned about? I can explain them. Cynthia approached, her pregnancy now clearly visible beneath her professional attire. She carried a tablet and wore the quiet confidence that had first attracted Devon years ago. Dr. Bennett, Eleanor said coldly, this doesn't concern you. Actually, it does. Cynthia tapped her tablet, and suddenly the construction site's temporary walls lit up with projected data, complex financial algorithms and trading patterns. You see, dark matter isn't just about invisible mass in the universe. It's about seeing patterns in what appears to be chaos. The gathering crowd of reporters and onlookers grew silent as Cynthia began to explain. She walked them through the trading patterns, showing how the apparent irregularities were actually evidence of Eleanor's own market manipulation. Your shell companies left traces, she explained. Like gravitational lensing in space, we can see their effects, even if we can't see them directly. And now, thanks to Victoria's latest attack, we have the final piece of evidence we needed. James emerged from the coffee shop, accompanied by federal agents. The SEC has been very interested in these patterns, Eleanor, especially when compared to similar trades made by your fund in other markets. Eleanor's composure cracked slightly. You have no proof. Actually, came a new voice. We do. Marcus stepped forward, his barista's apron replaced by a crisp suit. Special Agent Marcus Fletcher, FBI Financial Crimes Division. Those coffee shop security cameras caught more than just your meetings with Victoria. They caught your entire network. The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. The humble coffee shop owner had been an undercover agent all along, gathering evidence not just against Victoria and Eleanor, but against an entire web of financial manipulation. Eleanor's hand tightened on her designer bag. You can't prove intent. No? Devon nodded toward the gathering crowd. Among them stood Miguel and his mother, along with dozens of other community members whose lives had been impacted by both Eleanor's manipulation and Jenkins Financial's transformation. These people aren't just statistics in a portfolio. They're witnesses to what real value looks like. As the federal agents began their formal proceedings, Victoria appeared, having rushed from the TV studio. She took in the scene with growing horror. It's over, Victoria, Devon said quietly. The truth was always going to come out. The only question was whether you'd be on the right side of it. She straightened her Prada jacket, a shadow of her former confidence remaining. You think this makes you a hero? Playing Robin Hood with your billions while your ex-wife carries your heir? It's pathetic. No, Cynthia stepped forward. What's pathetic is thinking that wealth only means money. Look around you, Victoria. This construction site, it's not just a building, it's hope, it's opportunity. It's proof that success can mean more than just profits. The morning sun had fully risen now, casting long shadows across the construction site. News helicopters circled overhead, capturing the scene as Eleanor Morrison and several of her associates were escorted to waiting federal vehicles. But the real story was unfolding at ground level. Community members began arriving for the groundbreaking ceremony. Students from the youth center, small business owners who'd benefited from the microfinance program, researchers excited about the new facilities. Among them, the Singapore investors walked proudly, having just announced a massive new commitment to similar projects across the country. James approached Devon with a tablet showing real-time market data. Jenkins Financial Group's stock was soaring as news of the FBI operation spread, with investors rushing to support their transparent, community-focused model. The board is unanimously behind Plan B, James reported. We're already getting calls from other firms wanting to adopt similar transparency initiatives. Devon nodded, but his attention was on Cynthia, who had stepped away from the crowd and was standing by the coffee shop's entrance. He joined her there in the spot where their paths had crossed again months ago. Remember what you said about binary stars? She asked softly. How they orbit each other, forever bound by gravity. Even when they appear to drift apart, he completed the thought. I've been thinking about Aurora, Cynthia continued, about the world we want her to grow up in, not just the privilege and opportunities, but the values, the understanding of what real success looks like. Before Devon could respond, a commotion arose from the crowd. Miguel was at the podium they'd set up for the ceremony, his young voice carrying across the construction site. "You all know Mr. Jenkins as the billionaire who gave up his penthouse to build this center," he began. "But at the youth center, we know him as the teacher who believes in us, who showed us that real wealth isn't about what you have, but what you give back." As Miguel continued, other students joined him, each sharing stories of how their lives had changed. The mother who started with one food truck and now employed half her neighborhood. The teenager who discovered a passion for astrophysics through Cynthia's teaching. The family that avoided foreclosure through Jenkins Financial's new community assistance program. Devin felt Cynthia's hand slip into his. "This is what dark matter looks like," she whispered. "The invisible forces that hold everything together." The groundbreaking ceremony began, not with the planned corporate speeches, but with stories from the community. The golden shovels, initially meant as props for a photo op, were wielded by students and local residents alongside business leaders and investors. As Devin stepped forward to take his turn, he looked back at the gathered crowd. Eleanor Morrison's arrest would make headlines, but the real story was here. In the transformed lives, the renewed community, the possibilities taking shape before them. The shovel bit into the earth, and as he lifted it, Cynthia stepped forward to add her strength to his. Together, they broke ground not just for a building, but for a new understanding of what success truly means. Later that evening, after the cameras had gone and the crowds had dispersed, Devin and Cynthia sat in the empty coffee shop. The blueprints for both the Science Center and Starlight Coffee spread before them, alongside ultrasound pictures of Aurora. "We need to talk about us," Cynthia said finally, "about what happens after today." "I know," Devin replied. He reached into his pocket and pulled out not a ring, but a key. "I bought a house. Nothing fancy, but it has a garden. And a room perfect for a nursery and," he hesitated, "a small observatory on the roof." Cynthia took the key, turning it over in her hands. "And where do you fit into this picture?" "Wherever you want me to," he answered honestly. "I'm not asking for everything back. I'm just asking for a chance to build something new, something real." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed with an urgent message, then hers. Then the shop's landline began to ring. The story had broken worldwide. Victoria had turned state's evidence, exposing a network of financial manipulation that stretched far beyond Eleanor Morrison. Jenkins Financial Group's transparency initiative was being hailed as a revolutionary model for ethical banking. The Singapore investors were proposing a global expansion of their community development program. But in that quiet moment, surrounded by the remnants of their past and blueprints for their future, none of that seemed to matter. Cynthia stood, still holding the key, and walked to the coffee shop's window. The construction site was visible, its temporary lights twinkling like earthbound stars. "Aurora will need both of us," she said finally, "not just as parents, but as examples. She'll need to understand that sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest choices. That wealth isn't just what you have, but what you choose to do with it." She turned back to him, and in her eyes Devin saw not just their past or their present, but a future full of possibilities. "The house has a garden?" she asked. "And a small greenhouse. I thought maybe you could teach Aurora about the stars while growing her own piece of earth." Cynthia smiled, and in that smile was every promise they'd ever made, every dream they'd shared, and every possibility still waiting to be discovered. "Well then, Professor Jenkins," she said softly, "I guess we have some building to do." Outside, the San Diego night was alive with stars, visible now that the construction lights had dimmed. Like dark matter, the forces that held their universe together couldn't be seen directly, but their effects were undeniable, pulling them back into orbit around each other, stronger now for having drifted apart. The next morning brought a flurry of activity that tested their newfound strength. News outlets worldwide were covering the story, and the Jenkins Financial Group headquarters was besieged by reporters. But it was a different kind of siege than during the Morrison scandal. This time, they were being hailed as pioneers of ethical finance. Sarah Chen orchestrated a series of press conferences, but with a twist that showed how much the company had changed. Instead of holding them in their luxurious boardroom, they hosted them at the youth center, where students like Miguel could share their stories alongside financial data. "The numbers tell one story," Sarah explained to CNBC, standing in front of a whiteboard covered with investment calculations. "But these students tell the real story. Every dollar we invest in their future returns more value than any market speculation ever could." Victoria's confession had opened a Pandora's box of financial corruption. Throughout the day, evidence emerged of similar schemes at other firms, leading to a wave of investigations across Wall Street. The Singapore investors, led by Mr. Wong, emerged as powerful advocates for the Jenkins model of transparent, community-focused banking. My grandfather's noodle shop became a chain of restaurants that put hundreds of children through college, Mr. Wong told reporters. Mr. Jenkins and Dr. Fa. Bennett understand that true wealth grows best when shared. That afternoon, as the media frenzy continued, Devin received an unexpected visitor in his temporary office at the youth center. Eleanor Morrison's daughter Catherine arrived without appointment or pretense. "I wanted you to have this," she said, placing a worn leather portfolio on his desk. "It's my grandfather's original business plan for Morrison Investments, before my mother turned it into what it became." Inside, Devin found yellowed pages outlining a vision remarkably similar to what he and Cynthia were building. A company that measured success not just in dollars, but in lives improved and communities strengthened. "The Morrison family would like to make amends," Catherine continued. "Not with money, but with action. We're converting our family foundation into a trust for educational initiatives, starting with full scholarships for every student at this youth center." The announcement of the Morrison Educational Trust made headlines, but the real story was happening in quieter moments throughout the city. At Lighthouse Coffee, soon to become Starlight Coffee, the regular customers gathered to share their own stories of transformation. An elderly man who'd been coming for years revealed he was a retired NASA scientist offering to volunteer at the Science Center. A group of local artists proposed turning the construction barriers into a community mural project. Miguel's mother catered the informal gathering with her now famous food truck, while students from the youth center presented their business proposals to impressed Singapore investors. As evening approached, Devin received another visitor, James, carrying a stack of documents that would reshape their future. "The board unanimously approved the transparency initiative," he reported. "But there's more. Other firms are reaching out wanting to create a network of community-focused financial institutions. They're calling it the Dark Matter Protocol, using market forces to reveal and strengthen invisible connections in communities." Devin looked out his office window at the youth center's playground, where Cynthia was teaching an impromptu astronomy lesson to a group of fascinated students. She'd set up a small telescope, and even in the fading daylight, her enthusiasm was contagious. "You know," James said, following his gaze, "when you first told me about dark matter years ago, back when you were just a lovesick grad student following Cynthia to her physics lectures, I thought you were crazy, but now I get it. The most powerful forces in our lives are the ones we can't see directly." The sunset painted the sky in shades of purple and gold as Devin joined Cynthia and the students. She was explaining how stars form, using the construction site as a metaphor for cosmic creation. "Everything in the universe is connected," she told them, her hand resting gently on her pregnant belly. "Just like this community. Sometimes it takes a telescope to see distant stars, and sometimes it takes a crisis to see what really matters. But the connections are always there, holding everything together." As the first stars became visible in the darkening sky, Devin looked around at the gathering of people who had become more than investors or clients or students. They had become a constellation of their own, bound together by forces stronger than mere gravity. The key to their new house felt warm in his pocket, a promise of not just a home, but a new way of living. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, while here on Earth their own pattern was finally becoming clear. Like dark matter, the forces that held their universe together couldn't be seen directly, but their effects were undeniable, pulling them back into orbit around each other. Stronger now for having drifted apart, and richer for understanding that true wealth lies not in what can be counted, but in what counts. 6 months after the groundbreaking ceremony, San Diego's financial district had transformed. The Jenkins Financial Group's headquarters now featured a public atrium where local artists and entrepreneurs showcased their work. The once imposing security desk had been replaced by a community information center, staffed by youth center graduates who helped visitors navigate both financial services and educational programs. Devin's former corner office had been converted into a collaborative workspace where students from the youth center met with business mentors. His new office was smaller, with a view not of the harbor, but of the nearly completed Science Center. He sat there now, reviewing the latest impact reports with James and Sarah Chen. The dark matter protocol has been adopted by 20 major financial institutions, Sarah reported, her traditional power suit replaced by more casual attire. The Morrison Educational Trust is fully funded, and the first wave of scholarships goes out next month. And Victoria? Devin asked quietly. James pulled up a news article on his tablet. Serving her reduced sentence at a minimum security facility, she's teaching financial literacy to other inmates. Apparently, she's quite good at it. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. Victoria's testimony had not only helped bring down Eleanor Morrison's network, but had sparked a nationwide conversation about ethical banking. Her fall from grace had become a case study in redemption. The Singapore group called, Sarah continued. They want to expand the community investment model to other cities, starting with that noodle shop neighborhood Mr. Wong keeps talking about. Before Devin could respond, his phone buzzed with a message from Cynthia. Meet me at Starlight. Urgent decision needed. The drive to the coffee shop took him past familiar landmarks that now held new meaning. Miguel's mother's food truck empire had expanded to 5 locations, each one a training ground for aspiring entrepreneurs. The construction barriers around the Science Center had become a stunning mural depicting the interconnection of cosmic and community forces, painted by local artists and youth center students. Starlight Coffee, as the lighthouse had been renamed, was buzzing with activity. The cooperative ownership model had been so successful that they'd had to create a waiting list for employees wanting to buy shares. The space had been redesigned to include a small library and study area, where Cynthia often held informal astronomy lectures. He found her in what they now called the Constellation Room, a cozy space where the ceiling had been painted with accurate star maps. Her pregnancy was in its final weeks, and she had the serene glow of someone who had found her true path. We have a problem, she announced, without preamble. The university called. They want to partner with the Science Center, but they have conditions. What kind of conditions? They want me to head their new Department of Community Science Education, full professorship, research funding, the works. She paused. It would mean splitting my time between here and campus. Devin sat down beside her, remembering how they'd first met in a university coffee shop, not unlike this one. What do you want to do? That's not all, she continued. The house next door to ours just went on the market. Marcus, Agent Fletcher, thinks we should buy it, convert it into a halfway house for women rebuilding their lives after incarceration. Victoria wrote to me about it. The mention of Victoria still stirred complicated emotions. She had been both betrayer and catalyst, her actions leading to destruction and renewal. Her recent letters from prison showed genuine remorse and a desire to make amends. One more thing, Cynthia added, her hand resting on her belly. Aurora's been kicking like crazy whenever we're here. I think she's trying to tell us something. Before Devin could respond, the door chimed. Catherine Morrison entered, followed by Mr. Wong and several other familiar faces from their journey. They were meant to meet later for a board meeting, but something had brought them here instead. We couldn't wait, Catherine explained. The global initiative. It's happening faster than we expected. Cities around the world want to implement the dark matter protocol. They want both of you to lead the expansion. Mr. Wong stepped forward, his usual formality softened by excitement. My grandfather's neighborhood in Singapore will be the first international site. The noodle shop still stands, you know. We thought perhaps it could become another Starlight Coffee location. The possibilities spiraled out before them like galaxies being born. Each decision would create new opportunities, new challenges, new ways to define success. The weight of these choices settled around them like stardust, full of potential energy waiting to be transformed. James arrived next, carrying blueprints for the halfway house project. Miguel and his mother followed, bringing food for what was becoming an impromptu community gathering. Sarah Chen joined them, her tablet full of expansion proposals temporarily forgotten, as she helped rearrange furniture to accommodate the growing crowd. The Constellation Room filled with people whose lives had become intertwined through forces as invisible but powerful as dark matter itself. Students from the Youth Center shared space with international investors. Former employees of Jenkins Financial talked strategy with community activists. The barriers between worlds had dissolved, replaced by connections stronger than money or power. As the sun set over San Diego, casting long shadows through Starlight Coffee's windows, Devin watched Cynthia lead an impromptu discussion about cosmic forces and community building. She had a gift for making complex concepts accessible, for helping people see the invisible threads that bound them together. "You know," James said quietly, joining him by the window, "when this all started, I thought you were having some kind of crisis, giving up the penthouse, restructuring the company. I was worried you'd lost your mind." "Maybe I had," Devin replied, "or maybe I'd finally found it." The gathering continued into the evening, evolving into something between a business meeting and a family dinner. Plans were made and unmade, dreams were shared and refined. The Halfway House project gained volunteers and supporters. The university partnership expanded to include community input. The global initiative found local anchors in every proposed location. As night fell, Cynthia called everyone to the roof terrace, a recent addition to Starlight Coffee that doubled as an observation deck. The city lights sparkled below them, but above the stars were emerging in their ancient patterns. "In astronomy," she began, her voice carrying clearly in the evening air, "we study both the visible and invisible universe. We learn that what we can see is only a small fraction of what exists. The same is true in communities, in relationships, in the way we build our lives." She turned to Devin, her eyes reflecting starlight. "Some forces can't be measured in traditional ways. They can only be observed through their effects on everything around them." The gathered crowd understood the metaphor. They had all been part of this transformation, had all seen how invisible connections could reshape visible reality. The dark matter protocol wasn't just about financial transparency. It was about recognizing and strengthening the hidden bonds that held communities together. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the coffee shop was quiet, Devin and Cynthia sat in the constellation room. The ceiling stars seemed to pulse with possibility. "I think we should do it all," Cynthia said suddenly. "The university positioned the Halfway House the global initiative, not because we can, but because we should. Because Aurora deserves to grow up in a world where success is measured by its impact on others." "It won't be easy," Devin cautioned. "Managing everything, maintaining balance, like binary stars?" She smiled. "Always in motion, but always connected?" "Something like that." She took his hand and placed it on her belly, where Aurora was once again making her presence known. "Feel that? She's strong, like her mother, but she's also wise, like her father finally learned to be. She knows that the most powerful forces in the universe are the ones that bring people together." The decision crystallized between them like a new star being born. They would move forward, not alone, but together, supported by the constellation of lives they'd helped create. The university would gain not just a professor, but a community. The Halfway House would become not just a building, but a bridge. The global initiative would spread not just a business model, but a new way of understanding value. As they locked up Starlight Coffee for the night, a shooting star streaked across the sky, a cosmic reminder that even the most established patterns can be beautifully disrupted. Devin and Cynthia stood in the doorway, their shadows merging in the starlight. "Ready to go home?" she asked. The word home held new meaning now. Not a luxury penthouse or even their modest house with its rooftop observatory, but something larger. Home was this community they'd helped build, this network of lives and dreams and possibilities, all orbiting around each other like stars in a galaxy. "One more thing," Devin said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out not a ring or a key, but a simple piece of paper. It was the deed to Starlight Coffee, recently transferred to the Employee Cooperative Trust. "It's official," he said. "We're just members now like everyone else. No special privileges, no controlling shares." Cynthia took the paper, understanding its significance. This wasn't just about ownership. It was about trust, about believing in the power of community to manage itself. It was their final step away from the old paradigm of power and control. "Perfect," she smiled. "Now we can focus on what really matters." As they walked to their car, the night was alive with possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, university committees to navigate, Halfway House regulations to understand, global initiatives to coordinate. But tonight, under the infinite sky, they were simply two people who had learned that the greatest wealth lies not in what you possess, but in what you help others discover. The Jenkins Financial Group tower stood in the distance, its lights now dimmed in accordance with the city's dark sky ordinance, another small change that symbolized their larger transformation. Soon, the Science Center would open its doors, The halfway house would welcome its first residents, and Aurora would arrive to inherit this world they'd helped reshape. But for now they had this moment, a quiet street, a starlit sky, and the understanding that true value isn't counted in dollars, but in connections, in possibilities, in the invisible forces that bind us all together, in an endless dance of giving and receiving, learning and growing, falling apart and coming together again. 5 years later, the San Diego Science Center's planetarium dome glowed with a spectacular display of cosmic phenomena. 5-year-old Aurora Bennett Jenkins sat in the front row, her dark curls illuminated by the starlight simulation above. Her small hand pointed upward as she whispered excitedly to her father, "Look, Daddy, binary stars just like in Mommy's stories." Devin smiled, remembering how those same stars had once helped him understand what truly mattered in life. The luxury watches and designer suits of his past had been replaced by comfortable teaching clothes. He still had his weekly class at the youth center, now expanded to 3 locations across the city. The planetarium show was a special preview of Cynthia's new educational program, combining astronomy with community impact stories. On the dome above them, stars and galaxies merged with images of transformed lives. Miguel graduating from Stanford Business School, his successful food truck empire now a case study in ethical entrepreneurship. The Morrison Educational Trust's first class of scholarship recipients entering graduate programs worldwide. Starlight coffee locations spreading across continents, each one a hub of learning and community growth. As the lights gradually rose, Devin saw Victoria Chen sitting quietly in the back row. Released from prison 2 years early for good behavior, she now ran the halfway house next door to their home, helping other women rebuild their lives. Her presence at community events was no longer awkward but welcome, a living testament to the possibility of genuine change. "Professor Jenkins?" A teenage girl approached, wearing a youth center volunteer badge. "Mr. Wong is ready for the video conference in the community room." The Singapore initiative had exceeded all expectations. The dark matter protocol was now a globally recognized standard for ethical banking, with the original noodle shop neighborhood serving as a model for community-centered development. Mr. Wong's grandfather's simple vision had sparked a worldwide movement. In the community room, screens showed similar centers around the world. The original Jenkins Financial Group Tower had become just one node in a constellation of spaces dedicated to learning, growth, and genuine prosperity. James, now the company's CEO, had maintained their commitment to transparency while expanding their impact. "Aurora's getting so big," Sarah Chen remarked, joining them for the conference. She had recently returned from opening a new center in Hong Kong. Hard to believe it's been 5 years since the groundbreaking. Before the call began, Devin slipped away to Starlight Coffee. The cooperative model had been so successful that employees now sat on the boards of major corporations, advising on ethical business practices. The Constellation Room had become a template for similar spaces worldwide, where community and commerce merged seamlessly. Cynthia found him there, still wearing her professor's badge from her morning lecture. Their marriage, restored 3 years ago in a quiet ceremony under the stars, was stronger for having been broken and rebuilt. "Ready for tomorrow?" she asked, sitting beside him. Tomorrow would mark the launch of their most ambitious project yet, a worldwide network of community science education centers, each one designed to make advanced learning accessible to all. The original Science Center, with its perfect blend of cutting-edge research and practical community impact, had proven that luxury could be redefined as the richness of opportunity. "Remember what you taught me about dark matter?" Devin asked, watching their daughter through the window as she explained constellations to younger children in the planetarium lobby. "How the invisible forces are the strongest?" Cynthia smiled, touching the simple wedding band that had replaced her grandmother's ring. "Some things have to fall apart before they can come together in the right way." Outside, the San Diego sunset painted the sky in shades of possibility. The Science Center's architecture, once a statement of corporate power, now opened itself to the community. The halfway house garden bloomed with flowers tended by women rebuilding their lives. Miguel's original food truck still parked in its special spot, a reminder of where their journey of transformation had begun. As night fell and stars emerged above the observatory dome, Devin and Cynthia joined their daughter on the observation deck. Aurora, named for the celestial lights that had guided them home, was already showing signs of inheriting both her mother's brilliant mind and her father's reformed heart. "Tell me again," she asked, peering through her telescope, "about how you and Daddy found your way back to each other?" Cynthia lifted her daughter onto her lap, pointing to the binary stars overhead. "Sometimes," she explained, "the most valuable things in life are the ones you can't see directly, like love, trust, and the courage to change." Devin watched his family, feeling the invisible but unbreakable bonds that connected them, to each other, to their community, and to the endless possibilities that lay ahead. In the end, his greatest wealth hadn't been counted in dollars or luxury items, but in moments like these, simple, profound, and infinitely precious. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient light reaching down to touch new dreams. Hand in the space between heaven and earth, a family that had learned the true meaning of value held on to each other, their love as constant as gravity and as boundless as the cosmos itself. What did you think of this story? Rate it from 0 to 10 in the comments below. We'd love to see your thoughts on this tale, and if you missed our last story, here's a glimpse of what happened. Love is a risky gamble, but when it involves wealth and class differences, it becomes a dangerous game. During that ceremony filled with laughter and judgment, the millionaire said "I do" to the waitress and mother of 3 children, defying all expectations. Years later, when the fairy tale dust had settled, she revealed that behind her modest smile was something far more intriguing than anyone could have imagined. What she did shocked everyone, and perhaps even him. Want to know how this story of appearances and secrets unfolds? Click on the video now and get ready for a twist you won't soon forget. See you there.